When people think about 90s and early 2000s supernatural television, they often think Buffy. But at the same time, there was another show sneakily pulling in viewership numbers bigger than most people realize. For 8 seasons, Charmed was a reliable, comforting, monster of the week juggernaut, routinely one of the top shows on the WB. But while the Halliwell sisters were fighting demons on screen, the real drama was happening behind the camera. We're talking creative differences, budget cuts, and an ugly feud causing one cast member to exit stage left, only for the story to completely change 2 decades later. This is the rise and the ongoing drama of Charmed. Now before we start, give this video a like if you watched this show back in the day and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Let's go back to 1998. The television landscape was dominated by the Big Four, NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox. But there was a scrappy new kid on the block, the WB. Now they had a few modest successes. Unhappily Ever After, which was admittedly a Married with Children knockoff, did well, and they had a squeaky clean hit in Seventh Heaven. But they needed more hits, and more importantly, they wanted a younger audience. So they went to a man who knew a thing or two about making hits, Aaron Spelling. Aaron Spelling was TV royalty at that point. By 1998, his production company had already given the world Charlie's Angels, The Love Boat, Dynasty, Beverly Hills 90210, and Melrose Place. And of course, Violet Bickerstaff. He knew how to make compelling TV with beautiful people. So the WB asked him to weave some of his magic. And he turned to a writer named Constance M. Burge, who pitched something a bit off the grid, a show about 3 sisters in San Francisco who discover they come from a long line of powerful witches. The working title was reportedly House of Sisters, but eventually they settled on something punchier, Charmed. Now it was time for casting, and the actors they chose would make the show a hit, but also create a lot of drama. More on that in a bit. To anchor the series, Spelling brought in a heavy hitter, Shannen Doherty, to play the eldest sister, Prue. 4 years earlier, Doherty had been fired from Spelling's own show, Beverly Hills 90210, after 4 seasons of highly publicized on-set tension, clashes with co-stars, and tabloid drama. But Spelling had a soft spot for her. He knew she was a star, and more importantly, he knew she brought eyeballs to the screen. Doherty agreed, but there was a catch. She wanted her real-life best friend, Holly Marie Combs, to play the middle sister Piper, and their real-life friendship translated to instant, undeniable on-screen chemistry. Now they just needed the rebellious younger sister Phoebe, and their first choice wasn't Alyssa Milano. The role was initially cast with an actress named Lori Rahm, but after shooting the pilot, she quit. Burge said it was for personal reasons. Others have reported that Rahm's church disapproved of her playing a witch. Tabloids floated the idea that she had a massive blowout with Shannen Doherty, which was believable because of Doherty's track record, but everyone denied it. Either way, Rahm was out. So Spelling needed a replacement fast, and that's when he reached out to Alyssa Milano, who he knew well from Melrose Place. But that wasn't the only cast switcheroo. The role of Inspector Andy Trudeau originally went to Chris Boyd, but was recast with Ted King. And then there was one more addition that wasn't in the original pilot at all, Daryl Morris, the mortal cop, who'd end up covering for the sisters for the next 7 years, played by Dorian Gregory. With the cast finally set and the pilot refilmed, Charmed premiered on Wednesday, October 7th, 1998 at 9 p.m. In the pilot episode, Something Wicca This Way Comes, Prue, Piper, and Phoebe reunite in their ancestral home. Phoebe finds the Book of Shadows in the attic and reads the incantation that unlocks their dormant powers. Prue gets telekinesis, Piper can freeze time, and Phoebe gets premonitions. They immediately have to use these powers to vanquish a warlock disguised as Piper's boyfriend. It was fun, fast-paced, and, well, it was charming, and viewers loved it. The premiere drew 7.72 million viewers. Now, this wasn't Friends or ER numbers, but for a network that was only 3 years old, those were huge. It broke the record for the highest-rated premiere in the WB's history, a record that would only be broken years later by the premiere of Smallville. And by the end of season 1, Charmed averaged about 5.4 million viewers. On a national scale, it ranked as the 118th most watched show, which sounds horrible, but that was good enough to be the WB's number 2 show, sitting right behind Seventh Heaven. It performed so well that in season 2, the WB decided to put it up against the big dogs, Thursday nights and NBC's must-see TV juggernauts. But that wasn't the only change in store for Season 2. Inspector Andy Trudeau was gone after dying in the Season 1 finale. To fill the void, the show introduced Greg Vaughn as Dan Gordon, the sisters' new next-door neighbor and Piper's love interest. Karis Paige Bryant was his teenage niece, Jenny Gordon, who was then written off midway through the season. Lachlan Monroe joined the recurring cast as Prue's new work rival and love interest, Jack Sheridan, and Brian Krause, who played White Lighter Leo Wyatt, was promoted from a recurring guest star to a main cast member. And while on this channel I've covered so many cases of shows moving time slots and going through cast changes and getting obliterated in the ratings because of it, Charmed actually held its ground. It averaged 5.2 million viewers and kept its spot as the WB's second best show. One episode, Reckless Abandon, even spiked to an impressive 7.48 million viewers. The show continued to be a massive hit for the WB, but of course, not everyone agreed with its direction. Creator Constance M. Burge constantly clashed with showrunner Brad Kern over the direction of the series. Burge wanted to focus on the sisterhood, the magic, and the emotional core of the family, whereas Kern wanted more serialized romance, specifically focusing on Alyssa Milano's character and her new demon love interest, Cole Turner, who would enter in Season 3. Feeling marginalized, Burge pulled back. After Season 2, she stepped down from her executive producer role, staying on only as a consultant. Brad Kern was now in full control, and the show kept rolling. The Season 3 premiere, The Honeymoon's Over, pulled in 7.65 million viewers, making it the second highest rated episode of the entire series. With characters Dan Gordon and Jack Sheridan gone, the overarching plot featured Phoebe falling in love with Cole, played by Julian McMahon, a half-demon sent to kill the sisters. It had viewers glued to their screens. The show pulled in 4.9 million viewers per episode, a slight drop from the previous season, but the show was holding steady. And that's when everything kinda blew up. At the end of Season 3, it was announced that Shannen Doherty had left the show, and fans were understandably shocked. But at the same time, they kinda weren't. Because she'd been fired from 90210, it was generally assumed that she'd been fired again. But the official story was that she was the one who decided to leave to pursue other opportunities and avoid backstage drama. 22 years later, that story would completely change. I've got all those juicy details coming up, so don't you go anywhere. Anyway, Doherty was gone so abruptly that there were two big questions. First, how would her character be written off? Well, it was kind of easy. The Season 3 finale ended with Prue and Piper left bleeding and unconscious on the floor after being blasted through a wall by a demon. So to start Season 4, they simply explained that Prue's injuries were too severe for her to be saved and she died. Easy peasy. But the second and perhaps more important question was this: how do you keep a show about the power of three going when you only have two sisters? Enter Rose McGowan as Paige Matthews, the long-lost half-sister. Because Paige was blood, she had powers, and the power of three was restored. The Season 4 premiere drew 5.97 million viewers, and the season as a whole pulled in 4.2 million viewers per episode, which was a drop. The show dropped from the second to the sixth biggest show on the WB, but it was still respectable. The show had endured a pretty dramatic shakeup and survived, but the shakeups were far from over. In Season 5, the network moved Charm from Thursdays to Sundays at 8 p.m., and instead of dying in the new time slot, the show again held its own. It officially became the highest-rated Sunday night program in the WB's history, drawing 4.5 million viewers an episode. And those viewers noticed something. The tone of the show was fundamentally changing. In Season 5, Charm started shifting from a dark, sisterhood-focused drama into campy fantasy that was kind of disorganized. And that tone continued into Season 6. The overarching storyline centered on Chris, played by Drew Fuller, a mysterious white lighter from the future, but the writers lacked a long-term plan for his character. So halfway through the season, they hastily rewrote his identity, creating massive plot holes. And then the writers introduced a Harry Potter-ish magic school that kind of ruined the show's gritty urban atmosphere. And the main characters seemed preoccupied with their love lives and not saving people. So why were the writers messing with the show so much when the ratings were still solid? The answer? They needed younger viewers. Advertisers pay a premium to watch viewers in the 18 to 34 range, but Charmed, while a hit, skewed older. So the notes started coming down from the network to lighten it up and, well, sex it up. And without Constance M. Burge in the mix, she left for good after season 4, there was nobody left protecting the show's original DNA. And the tone shift didn't really work. The show's average viewership dipped to 4.3 million, hitting a series low with the episode Witch Wars, which bottomed out at just 2.77 million viewers. And from there, the decline accelerated. In season 7, the show doubled down on trying to be cool with the kids. They brought in Nick Lachey, who was coming off his reality show Newlyweds, which documented his marriage to Jessica Simpson. It was Lachey's first real acting role, and by his own admission, the jump from reality TV was tough. They also brought in Kerr Smith, fresh off 6 seasons of Dawson's Creek, to play Kyle Brody, a supernatural hunting federal agent and Paige's season-long love interest. Charisma Carpenter and Billy Zane, other young stars, had 3-episode arcs, but none of it could stop the slide. Season 7 averaged around 3.5 million viewers, down from the mid-4s. The audience that had made Charmed a WB anchor was drifting away, and the younger crowd the network kept fishing for never showed up in the numbers to replace them. So the writing was on the wall. The 3 lead actresses didn't renew their contracts beyond season 8. Charmed, as fans had known it, was wrapping up. So when the WB renewed it for season 8, they did so with a condition: find fresh blood who could carry the show beyond season 8 without the original stars, or be worthy of a spin-off. So they brought in Kaley Cuoco as Billy Jenkins, a 21-year-old novice witch. It was Cuoco's first network drama. Brad Kern was diplomatic about it, saying Billy was there to lighten the load for the 3 leads and bring, quote, new blood to an aging show. Critics said the show had Cousin Oliver syndrome, which is the desperate act of bolting a cute young character onto a dying show to juice the ratings, and not helping things, the show's budget was slashed. The WB's belt tightening was brutally visible on screen. They couldn't afford to shoot on location that much, they couldn't afford elaborate demon makeup, and most shockingly, they couldn't even afford their own cast. Brian Krause, who had been a series regular as Leo since season 2, was abruptly written out of a large chunk of season 8 simply because the production couldn't afford him. And none of the casting or budget cuts ended up mattering because when the WB folded into the CW, executives said there wasn't room for a Charmed spin-off, so the Kaley Cuoco spin-off series died before it began. And with that, Charmed was done as well. The series finale, Forever Charmed, aired on May 21, 2006. Written by Brad Kern, the episode used time travel and a massive flash forward to give the sisters the ultimate happy ending. It drew 4.49 million viewers, the highest rated episode of the entire dismal 8th season. The final shot of the series featured the sisters growing old together, surrounded by a massive happy family, before the doors to the Halliwell Manor closed one last time. It was a beautiful send-off, but the show wasn't completely ready to ride off into the sunset. It found a massive afterlife in syndication, running endlessly on TNT. It became one of the most binged shows on early Netflix. It spawned a comic book continuation, and in 2018, it got a 4-season reboot on the CW with a brand new cast. But the show still wasn't done. Well, at least the drama wasn't. For 22 years, the official story remained that Shannen Doherty simply quit the show to avoid the on-set tension, but in late 2023, a different version of the events finally came out. Months before she lost her battle with stage 4 breast cancer, she dropped a bombshell on her podcast, Let's Be Clear. She didn't quit, she was fired, and according to her, Alyssa Milano engineered the whole thing. As Doherty and her co-star and friend Holly Marie Combs explained it, Milano had allegedly documented instances of on-set tension and issued a brutal legal ultimatum to the producers. It's her or me, and if you don't fire Shannen, I'm suing for a hostile work environment. Instead of facing a lawsuit, the studio fired Doherty. Now, Alyssa Milano denies this version of events. She claims she didn't have the power to get anyone fired, pointing instead to a professional mediator who had been brought in to investigate the set, and stated the final decision rested entirely with Aaron Spelling and the studio. But the rest of the cast has been very vocal in recent years. Combs said producer Jonathan Levin admitted that Milano forced her hand and that showrunner Brad Kern sent Doherty an apology letter years later for how terribly the situation was handled. Co-star Brian Krause said nobody saw the firing coming. Even Rose McGowan, who joined the cast after Doherty left, said that everyone had been protecting Milano for years by keeping quiet on the truth of Doherty's exit. Now, some say it's sad that people are still debating what happened on the set, and in some ways it tarnishes the legacy. It was, after all, a show about the unbreakable bond of sisterhood that was, ironically, very much broken behind the scenes. At the same time, though, all of this kind of demonstrates how popular the show was and how devoted a following it had. Despite the drama and cast changes and everything else, Charmed managed to accomplish what many other shows haven't. It stayed relevant and stood the test of time. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.